Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Healthy Home Show. I'm Charlie, and with me today, I've got Laura Harnett from Seep. Now, I'm really excited because we've covered quite a lot on this show, basically healthier cleaning products and detergents, etc. But we haven't actually managed to speak to any companies or anybody yet that's an expert around eco products that you actually use for the cleaning. I think that's quite often forgotten. So, hi, Laura. Thank you for joining us. And why don't you just introduce yourself, if you don't mind, and perhaps tell us a little bit about why you started Seep?
Yeah. So thank you very much for having me on, Charlie. So my name's Laura and I'm the founder of Seep. I'm also a mum of two. And I never ever thought I'd set up my own business. I never thought I'd be a founder. I sort of had a very safe kind of job in working for kind of retail environment. And in my late 30s, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which is a sort of moment that most women, dread, think about, and hope never happens to them. And then, but I often talk about sleep as being one of my silver linings that came out of that. So, went through my treatment, became very aware of the sorts of things in our homes, the things that we eat, and how much of an impact that has on our bodies and obviously the environment. And had started to pick up all the sort of toxic free, sprays and washing detergents, that sort of thing. And then try to find a tool, so like a sponge or a cloth or a brush that wasn't made of plastic and was made of sort of renewable materials, and couldn't find anything, especially in the kind of mainstream supermarkets at the time. And then just couldn't understand why. So I was like, why has everything else been disrupted? Why have I got something that I can trade to everywhere else, and why not in this category? And actually, not only are they bad, sort of not great for you or the planet because they're made from plastic, but they look really ugly too, right? Those green and yellow ones. So So we set up Seep to kind of solve for that, so that people have an alternative that is better for you and the planet, and that looks great too and
Yeah.
works well, because that's important.
Yeah, fantastic. And I find it really interesting what gets people into looking at healthier homes and healthier products and making more conscious consumer choices. Because someone asked me the other day, actually, when I met them, they're like, oh, do you need to have been really ill to get into this work? And I kind of had to think about it. And I was like, well, I don't think so, but normally there is some catalyst, isn't there? And it's normally around your own health that really kind of gets you to take a deeper dive into these things and question basically the things that are in our home and the things that we are using every day. Did you intuitively know that plastics and other things were bad for health and the environment, or was that part of your healing research?
It's been a voyage of discovery, really. So I was kind of pretty anti-plastic already, and certainly in terms of consumables and things being wrapped in plastic. For environmental reasons, actually, I was just like, I just want to reduce my household waste. I could see the stuff that was going into the kind of recycling bin and the normal bins every week. And had understood, especially when it comes to sort of cancer and breast cancer, things like deodorant and some of the chemicals you put on your body. I was starting to become more aware of them, but then hadn't really understood the impact of microplastics. And this thing called microplastics actually is pretty recent, right? It's in the last few years. And the sheer number of sort of chemicals that are added to sort of petrochemicals, but so the oil that we take out of the earth to make it flexible and the color and have certain properties. And so it was looking at that and understanding it that I suddenly was like, right, well, I set up Seep for environmental reasons, and then more and more it's becoming about health, sort of healthier you and a healthier home as well, which I was a sort of unintended benefit.
Yeah, it's funny, is it? Because I think a lot of people start with the environmental route because it's pushed in our faces quite a lot these days. With climate change and everything, we're really pushed to be more sustainable, which is great. But it's funny that a lot of people haven't really made the connection yet that, healthier for the planet is healthier for us as humans because, we're so interconnected. And of course, that makes sense once you know that. But sometimes it takes a long way around to kind of reach that conclusion. And yeah, like you, I'm absolutely horrified at the amount of plastics in our environment. And with the research that showed, that kind of these microplastics were crossing the blood-brain barrier and that they're being found in people's brains, and the effect that that was having on, our kind of autoimmune systems, our
Yeah.
nervous systems, literally our health in general, is just absolutely horrifying. And it just seems like the more we try and sort of, I don't know, reduce plastics, it seems that they pop up in other places. It just goes on forever. So it's really great that you're trying to make changes around that. But what is it with a normal kind of a cleaning cloth then? Why are they normally made of plastic? Does it make it any easier? And what is wrong with the plastic? Does it kind of break down into our water supply? How does that get absorbed by humans and also affect the environment?
Yeah. So I'm going to take kind of two different types of products. So our sort of iconic one is the sponge scourer. So, those kind of green and yellow ones that everyone sees. It's kind of, you look underneath every sink or behind every toilet, and often you'll see one of those curly products. And actually, you can see when you look at an old one, it's all bobbly. The green is all bobbly on the top, and you can see that it's getting brittle and it's coming off. And so, both of the bottom is kind of polyurethane, the top is some sort of polypropylene. It is a scourer, so it's meant to be scoured, and that action makes it break down. And then it releases, we found some studies to show, millions of microplastic particles over its lifetime. Some of those are nanoparticles, some of them are slightly larger. And then, those go out into the water system, get eaten by fish. They go out into your home, into your sink. And so, and people, everyone's most people will do the washing up once a day, unless you're really lucky and you got someone to do it for you. So actually it's something that you're touching every day. And so that, what we found is an alternative, which is made from wood pulp, which is for the sort of spongy bit, and a piece of loofah, which is a vegetable that grows on a vine. And so, it scours, but it all, it breaks down over time. It lasts longer, but it's importantly breaking down into stuff that isn't microplastic and hasn't got the sort of ramifications that the normal ones have, and it looks better. Again, those green and yellow ones are just the ugliest thing, and why have one of those when you've got a sort of gorgeous sink? And so that's kind of our iconic product. And then we've got, if you look at something like kind of cloths, actually in the old, ages ago, it used to be these kind of cotton cloths, which obviously don't have any plastic in. But over time, that's changed into kind of J cloths, which is obviously often mixed with acrylics. And then you've then got microfibers, which people don't realize microfiber means tiny little microplastic sort of polyester. And, in some ways they are really great. They work really well. They last a long time. So from a sort of carbon footprint point of view, they're great. But they're polyester, so they're releasing microfibers every time you're washing them and using them. And so we've got an alternative that's all made from bamboo, which is one of the fastest growing crops. And so but it's hard. The question you had was like, why? And the answer is, some of it works really well, like the traditional ones. They last a long time, and it's super cheap to make vast quantities of plastic. That was what made it a wonder, what's made it a wonder material.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the problem is convenience is slightly killing us, right? It's like everything we look at these days, which makes our lives more convenient. Like, I don't know, it's stay press sheets, let's say, that you don't have to particularly iron, or any of these other kind of textiles, whatever, that are covered with forever chemicals. Everyone's like, yay, it means I don't have to do as much work. But at the same time, it's that convenience that's really damaging our health and damaging the environment. So apart from your cloths then, can you see, is there any other areas that you're going into, any other gaps in the market that you think need to be disrupted?
So we want to stick to cleaning tools. So it's so if you can imagine that part of the cleaning aisle that has, sponges, cloths, washing up brushes, gloves, we have some bin liners, that sort of thing. And so we don't want to go beyond that. And even within that, there's still a lot of innovation. We're still, a relatively young company. So there's a lot of, before we come up with, masses of products, we want to kind of make the ones that we have got as brilliant as they can be and fun, great looking. One of the things is that I think we've learned over time. So our early customers were very much not quite eco warriors, but we're doing it for the planet. And as we grow, we want people to choose us because they work really well and they look great and they just happen to be eco and better for you. Because I think not not everyone is willing to compromise, and so they have to perform in their own right, not just because they're eco.
Yeah, I find a lot of it comes down to habit changing, though, doesn't it? It's a bit like
Mm.
the same with diet. I think a lot of people kind of object sometimes when I try and encourage them to buy organic food, for example. But the thing is, I think when you actually look at it cost for cost, it actually isn't that much more expensive, basically, to buy organic. It's just a change in habit. And
Yeah.
what I love about kind of ordering in fruit and veg boxes and things like that is that it comes straight to your door. You don't get distracted by all these aisles of plastic, basically, of like biscuits and crisps and all the rest of it that aren't particularly good for your diet. So I just think some of this is kind of about changing habits and maybe not buying all your kind of products for your home and your food and everything from one kind of supermarket. It's easy these days to order stuff online that come straight in. You can get like subscription services. Is that something that you've looked at for your own company?
Yeah, so at the moment we sell online as well as being available in places like Ocado and Tesco. We've looked at subscriptions. I feel like, certain things lend themselves really well to subscriptions, like, I don't know, if it's a deodorant or washing powder that you're using and consuming every day. But our products last quite a long time. So our little sponge scourers last, 2 months plus. And so actually, like, a subscription doesn't really work that well, right? So what we do is provide quite a lot of information about how do you look after your spot, so you can pop them in the washing machine or the dishwasher to freshen them up. It's
Yeah,
the same
cool.
with our sponge cloths. So our sponge cloths are sort of a mix between a sponge and a cloth. They're great for kind of wiping up surfaces. And again, you can pop them in the washing machine, freshen them up, and it's just a different way of working, right? Instead of, one of the biggest categories in sort of cleaning is these disposable antibacterial wipes. And so, instead of people using those and using them, either single use or something like a J cloth, which is, you might use it a few times or, a few times a week and then throw it. Like, yeah, keep washing them, put them on in the washing machine, and then at the end you can cut them up and put them into your food waste or your compost bin. But it's behavior change and explaining to people you know the cost price is, yeah, actually, if you look at the amount of uses you get out of them, it's not that different.
Yeah, brilliant. I've got to ask you about greenwashing because, greenwashing is so rife within, home products, etc. And there's so many companies out there at the moment that kind of like are saying, yeah, we're doing a much better thing. But when you do a deep dive into kind of the ethics behind the company, etc., doesn't look so rosy. So how have you found any difficulty like pushing your sustainability ethics onto the manufacturers that you use, and have you come up against any kind of greenwashing issues?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's such a difficult topic to kind of, we have to be really on it with our manufacturers and what we're doing and making sure we're making the right choices. But also we have a responsibility to educate and to show people, that in our space, we've found so many products over the years that are in brown and green packaging. They're made of bamboo, and then you turn it around and you see it's a sort of bamboo and polyester blend or whatever it is. And so, and obviously that means that custom companies can then charge a premium for it. And so, there in our supply chain, we make sure that we understand which factories we're using. We go and see them. They have the sort of highest level of certification, and we help, we follow up with them to make sure that they're better. We ask questions about where does the original product, kind of material come from? Can you show us the evidence that it is? But it's still really like mistakes happen, right? Sometimes the manufacturer you're speaking to thinks they're buying the right thing, but they haven't asked the right questions. And so very early on, like our first ever cloth that we've discontinued now, but it was a sort of a bamboo blend, and we had asked them, double checked, seen documentation, and then we had our buyer came in, we had a new buyer come in, and they just could detect. They were like, I've seen there's something about it that isn't right. Sent it all off for testing and then found that there was 1.5% polyester in it. And
Wow.
so and I think that stuff is going to happen. Like you have to try, like really ethical businesses will put their hands up and say, we got it wrong or it's not good enough. And this is what we're doing about it. And but it's really hard to be perfect all the time. But I think that's the sign of a good business is when they're being they're being transparent and honest and trying to do the right thing. But it's also virtually impossible to be completely perfect. And so I think that's been our view, figuring out what we can do better. And then calling out without calling out names of where things aren't as good. And, we're not a sort of shouty, pointy company. I just don't believe in that. But I do want to make sure that people aren't getting bamboozled. That's a pun, I've never used that one before, but um, and buying stuff that isn't authentic, isn't what it says it is, and actually the business behind it isn't who they, if you just do a bit of digging, look at the website, understand, are these guys, are they actually walking the talk, or is it just a bit of brown packaging?
It's exhausting though, isn't it? You can understand why people kind of I don't know, cut corners sometimes because, it's very difficult to kind of dive down so deep that you get like 100% of the answers that you're looking for. And these days, who's got the time? Do you know what I mean? That's why I quite like being able to speak to people like you because it's nice to be able to give people information direct from the kind of brands and direct from the experts so that they don't have to kind of spend all their time trying to search it out themselves. But I just wondered, is there any certifications or any labels on cleaning products that you have, say, like in the textile industry, you'll have like GOTS certified or Ecotex or something like that. Is there something that exists like that already?
So our category, I would say, is pretty devoid of those kind of certifications. So we are like sort of the compostability and biodegradability. I mean, ideally it's compostable. Home compostable is what you need to be looking for. So that's that. We look for FSC as well. So, are things sustainably sourced when it comes to all the materials. So for example, our bamboo and our wood pulp and our rubber is all FSC certified. So that's a good example of one. And then and I think things like kind of B Corp, and we love Buy Women Built, which is
Mm.
and I guess that's not eco, but it is about supporting female owned businesses. So I think just looking for those kind of accreditations is really important.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Thanks. That's a new one to me, actually, by Women Built. I was looking into it the other day, and yeah, it looks a really cool organization. So I'm going to check that out some more. Just on landfill, I was wondering, what kind of obstacles have you come up on landfill and what discoveries have you made? Because when I've looked into products that go into landfill and how much we're actually recycling in this country, I'm normally quite appalled at how little of the recycling that we think that we're recycling is actually getting recycled. It's quite hard to say that sentence. Um, but I just wondered if there was any kind of insights you could give us around, recycling, if there's anything we can do as kind of, individuals basically that can make that process better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of my regular rants. I think Um, one of the things that doesn't help is that every local authority organises their own waste collection, right? So what is accepted in one local authority isn't accepted in another, what's curbside recycling, and there's just a huge amount of inconsistency about what goes where. And it's actually a bit of a nightmare to navigate. And so what we try and do is go, right, well, can it go, home compostability is the highest level, because in theory you can put it into your food waste, you can put it into your own home compost bin, you can put it in the ground if you want to, and it should be able to, it should completely disappear. That's like our mantra. But it's not always possible to have everything that certified. And I think one of the things that we found was that, and actually quite rightly, our customers are kind of hauling us up about. So we've got a sort of pretty vocal customer base, which we welcome. But our mission is to prevent 1 billion plastic cleaning tools from going to landfill by 2030. And of course, actually in the UK, not very much goes to landfill. It's burnt. Like I think 60 or 70% is actually incinerated, which not very many people know either. And so, making sure that whatever we're producing doesn't need to go in that direction is kind of the number one thing for us. So like our sponge scourers shouldn't have to go in there. We have these copper scourers which are endlessly recyclable, but then depending on the local authority you need to do something slightly different with them.
Okay.
So so for every product on our website we give like advice for end of life,
Hmm.
so that people can look it up and do you know the least impactful thing at the end of life when they've stopped using the product.
Yeah, it seems strange that they wouldn't have like a one size fits all kind of approach to recycling. It sounds like they're making their own kind of work more difficult for themselves. So it seems bizarre. But anyway.
I'd really
Um,
recommend, there's something called the Great Plastic Count that's supported
oh,
by Greenpeace every year. I think they do it maybe not every year anymore, but every other couple. So actually the data on the types of plastic and the types of packaging that gets thrown out there's very limited amount of it. And so every year lots of households and schools all sign up to try and give some more visibility about what that is. And so I'd recommend looking at that as well.
cool, man. I'll add that to the show notes, actually. That sounds like a really good idea. I'd like to check that out. I was going to ask you, like, what has the kind of reception been like when you've approached people like Ocado, Waitrose, and other kind of main supermarket kind of chains? Have you found that they're really receptive because they need to kind of make some massive changes in-house already, or are you finding they're a bit slow on the uptake?
I think they're realists. Like retailers, they understand that there's a gap sometimes between what people say they think they want to do and what they care about and what actually people do when it comes to the checkout. And so yes, they've all got kind of green credential agendas and net zero agendas and that sort of thing, but they also have a finite amount of space on their shelf, and they, whether it's a virtual shelf or they're like a shop, and they need to make sure that whatever is on that shelf people will pick up and pay for. And so I'd say it's a kind of potentially a door opener. But if you haven't got the kind of, rate of sale and the brand awareness and all the other things that you need to have as a strong commercial brand, then you're not going to get on that shelf. So you've got to, it's not good enough for it to be the only thing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Slowly but surely. I'm conscious of your time because I know that you have a hard stop at 3. I really like saying that. Sounds like we're in a film or something.
It's such an annoying business term, isn't it? Sorry.
It's great. But I wanted to go back and just ask you a few things about, your own health. Like you told us earlier, basically how it was your own health and your own kind of illness with breast cancer, basically, that made you make these changes and kind of create these eco cleaning products. But I just wondered, like, if you had any other insights around like were there any other changes that you made, basically you felt made a really big difference to your health? And if people are thinking about making healthier changes generally in their lifestyle, what would you say that they should focus on first, apart from cleaning products, obviously?
Yeah. when I was going through all my treatment, so I went through, double mastectomy, chemo, radio, the whole works. When I was going through it, I was really lucky enough to have this kind of program that went alongside it, which was all about like the kind of non-medicalized wellness, which was amazing. And one of the stats that really stuck with me is that sort of 60%, you can improve your chances of not having a recurrence by 60% through healthy lifestyle, not just drugs. And so, things like regular exercise, eating the right thing, eating the rainbow, lots of the products that have all the good stuff that I remember Brazil nuts was the thing that they said if you can eat, one to two Brazil nuts a day, it's got like lots of selenium and it's really good for you. So I think, yeah, I'm a believer in all of that matters. Like I'm not always, as a busy founder and a mum, I'm not always great at following all the advice I've been given, but I know that it's like instinctively, like you just know it's right. You feel better in yourself when you're looking after what comes into, you come into contact with. So that's when and sleep, that's the other thing. Sleep is super important, which is I'm not very good at. So yeah, that's
Me neither. That's so sleep eludes me the entire time as well. Doesn't matter what I seem to do, it never seems to be as good as it used to
as
be,
it
but
used
never
to be. I
mind.
just think, yeah.
Before we came on the call, we were talking a little bit about how perhaps we need to reframe what clean means. And I wondered if, before I let you go, you could kind of talk about that a little bit, because for me, one of my pet hates is the fragrances and all these other kind of chemicals and stuff that they put into cleaning products, but also into all these just horrible plugins and God knows what else we use in our homes that really affect our air quality and our health. But it always fascinates me how I think we've gone slightly awry with what clean actually means. And the overuse of antibacterial products now that people use day in, day out, and now they're getting kind of all kind of autoimmune problems or dermatitis issues and eczema and all these other things. I don't think people realize that over cleaning really isn't healthy. So I wondered if you could maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you've covered some of it, right? So it's the, it, and if you look on, Clean Talk or, the clean influencers, a lot of the time, the kind of stronger the scent, the more antibacterial things are, the better. And I just think it's not, it has been a driver of innovation in cleaning, this kind of amazing smells, and actually often they're synthetic fragrances. And so I used to love having my clothes smell like, gorgeous when I put them on because I'd used this kind of quite strong detergent, which actually was giving me and my son eczema. And now, I've stripped back. There's no softener because again, softener actually isn't that great for you. It's not really needed. And now it's kind of, there's no smell, it's fragrance free. And so I think yeah, we just need to have a look at what is it, how do we clean things the most natural way possible wherever we can. Like it's not always possible, sometimes you do need something antibacterial. Your dog's had a poo on the carpet, like you've got to do something about it. But in general, actually things, we do quite a lot of hacks with kind of lemons and bicarb soda and white vinegar. And I know it's kind of cheesy and old fashioned, but actually a lot of those work really, really well. And you don't need to worry about, all of the chemicals that have been added to it that you don't quite know how they've been tested or if they've been tested at all, right?
Yeah, and I think a bit like skincare, we've all been kind of lured into this trap to believe that we need a different cleaning product for the kitchen and for the bathroom and for your surfaces and for the toilet. And do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you've got most of the same products in each of them. So I kind of think some of that is just a bit of a kind of commercial distraction. And
Yeah.
and also, if you haven't got time to use the lemon and the baking soda and the whatever, there are healthier products out there that are good to use if you don't have the time to kind of make them up yourself. So yeah, I think there's we've just need to basically come back to basics, I think, a little bit on the cleaning front. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
there's
big
definitely.
fans of Nancy Birtwhistle. I don't know if
No,
you've
I
joined
don't
the
know her.
whistle. So she I think she's one of the winners, or certainly one of the sort of big contestants on Bake Off a few years ago, and she's just got this amazing Instagram. She's written lots of books, and she makes these homemade like cleaning spray recipes, and and believes in things shouldn't be expensive as well. And so I think yeah, I would, if people are looking for in sort of recipe inspo for cleaning, then I'd really recommend her.
Brilliant. We will definitely check that out. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you wanted to add about your products, what's coming next, where we can look out for you, any Instagrams, where we can follow you?
Yeah, so I mean, this year has been massive for us. So we were on Dragon's Den at the beginning of the year. We're backed by now Deborah Meaden and Trini, and we've got a sort of second exciting moment in September where we have got our first national TV ads campaign, which has been supported by Channel 4 and B Corp. And so we're going to be talking about the impact of microplastics, and why it starts with a humble sponge, and that's kind of really easy everyday switch that people can make. So that's probably the biggest thing happening this year.
Wow, that's mega exciting. I can't wait for that. I'm going to be looking out for the adverts. Brilliant. And Instagram, is that the best place to follow you?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we show up. Most days there'll be something, we post several times a week, the news, tips, cleaning hacks, there's lots of things on there. So yeah, that's the best place to find us.
Amazing, Laura. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great chatting to you. We met at the Ideal Home Show, and I'm sure I'll see you there
Yeah.
again. But I can't wait to see the kind of next developments in your business. It's brilliant, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And if anyone wants to give us a try, the code Laura, just all in capitals, LAURA, will give people 20% off.
Amazing. Thank you.
Fantastic.